Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Pranzata Podcast. I am your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is episode number 44 on my podcast series here on YouTube. Before we get into it, this is a podcast where I interview musicians, comedians, and artists from the New York, New Jersey, and Philadelphia area. Today I'm going to be doing a solo podcast because I am still recovering from COVID. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Before we get into it, don't forget to hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit like if you're into that kind of thing. I think starting next week or the week after, I'll be having guests and videos again. Okay, so let's get right into it. As I just said, I am not having a video again today. I'm pretty much, I think at this point, for those of you who listened last week, I was planning to have a guest on, but I got COVID, so obviously I was contagious. Last week was pretty much day 3 of when I recorded the podcast last week. It was pretty much day 3, so at that point I couldn't have guests over. I think I'm technically not contagious at this point, according to the CDC. I mean, honestly, who the fuck knows, like, how long someone's contagious for, but the word on the street is this year that after 6 days, you don't have to quarantine anymore. You can go out with a mask on for a week later. But, you know, just to kind of play things safe, I figured if I have the capability of just recording a solo podcast today from home, why not, you know, just in case. As far as my symptoms go, I don't have a fever anymore. My fever is completely normal. Last week I had 102 fever, which is pretty scary. And then it went down to 99, which is a low grade fever. My fever is totally normal now. It's like 98. It's like totally healthy, 98 point something. I don't really have a cough. I'm not sneezing as much. I do have a little bit of sniffles, like cold symptoms. And then overall, I was telling this to, you know, some of my friends this week. COVID just knocked me out. I don't know if anybody else there who has it or know anyone who has it right now experienced a similar thing, but it really drained my energy. You know what I mean? I feel really tired. I think today is the best energy day I've had so far. But I was looking into it and I was reading online that apparently post-COVID fatigue is a normal part of the process, which I'm not looking forward to, but apparently it could take for some people 3 weeks to get your energy back, and for some unfortunate others it could actually last like forever. I mean, I'm sure not forever, but many months after. Apparently it can kind of really change your system and make you really sleepy for a long time. So it kind of makes sense, though. My body just fought off a foreign virus that it's never had before, or at least not to my knowledge, it's never had before. So it's using a lot of energy. It's using up a lot of my energy to fight this virus, and I'm very sleepy. So, by the way, that's why I didn't record video again this week, because yesterday, if I want to get a video up, I have to do it at least 1 or 2 days in advance because editing and uploading the video takes a lot longer than audio. So I couldn't get it done yesterday. I was just like way too tired. I was napping, sleeping in late, that sort of thing. But anyways, I'm doing a little better, you know, each day. I think by next week I'll be much better. My energy is not there yet, and I think it's going to be a while before it's 100% there, which is really frustrating for me because I feel like a lot of people always compliment me on how active I am, and my energy levels are typically really high. So it has been really frustrating, and just not having my typical energy and not being able to do the things that I like to do. You know, I'm usually really big into fitness, and I kind of can just go all day. Like, I feel like I can wake up 7 a.m. and just like grind from morning to night, and I don't really get tired. But that's not been the case this week. I guess the good thing about that is that I've been wanting to start watching TV more, which I know is a weird thing to say because a lot of people are trying to not watch TV, but I think for me personally, I've missed out on a lot of TV, and I don't understand like the references and a lot of what people are quoting, and I feel kind of uncultured because of that. So I've been wanting to watch more TV. So I actually finally have been, because I've been stuck in bed. So like, what else is there really to do? So my sister has been pushing me to watch this show called Schitt's Creek on Netflix, and I've been sort of holding off on doing it. But this time around, I was like, fuck it, might as well just do it. And it's so funny. Right now, I'm on season 3 of it, and I have to say, it is really funny. My sister has a good sense of humor and a good taste in humor. I know she loved It's Always Sunny in Philly, and she's always been into, you know, comedy sitcoms and that type of thing. But anyhow, so I mentioned last week that I wanted to have a bit of a deeper conversation about how reflecting on my year and things that I learned last year, kind of reflecting on my goals that I had set for last year, and really looking back, my 2021 did not turn out as planned at all, for good and for bad. So I don't even know where to begin with this conversation, because I'm kind of just jumping right into it. And I didn't write anything down today. This is just totally a free flow conversation. So, okay, let's just start here. One of my listeners last week sent me a Q&A asking me when my single is finally going to come out. And I basically explained to him that at this point, I'm not even setting a deadline on it anymore. I had a deadline to try to get it done last year, but was a complete failure because of financial stresses that I was under. And that I honestly really truly fought to get my finances in place last year. I wasn't lazy. I mean, I really was working hard, but the fact of the matter is if you don't have any savings at all, you really can't predict what kind of emergencies could happen. And even though I was working hard, there was a couple things that happened to my vehicle that just totally screwed up my plans. So that's kind of where I fell short there. So last year, and this is where I want to get into this talk too, about what I learned about living alone. So basically last year, I lived all by myself in New Jersey, and like I said, that is not cheap. That's very expensive. My thought process at the time when I decided to live by myself was that I thought I would get more done living by myself, and I wasn't completely wrong about that. Because I had set out to really have a very productive year. I wanted to accomplish a lot of goals with music. I wanted to accomplish a lot of goals with comedy, with my podcast. And I think my fear about getting a roommate last year was that I might have a roommate who didn't like the lifestyle, like they were overwhelmed, you know, because by the way, I basically like shoot a podcast in my house. I run my own business out of my home. I have students coming to my house. I don't know. I feel like if I'm living with the wrong person, somebody might not be cool with that. Not only that, but if you get yourself, and again, I know this from personal experience, if you get yourself in a situation where you don't get along with your roommates, that can cause a lot of emotional stress. And I figured if I got myself in a situation like that, that would interfere with my goals and my plans. And I thought that if I, got a roommate that didn't like my lifestyle or didn't like me or I didn't like them or something like that, it would really screw my shit up. Because I don't know, me personally, I really don't do well with personal conflicts. I feel like they drain a lot of my energy. If I'm in a social situation with family or friends or people I live with where people aren't getting along, that actually really takes a lot out of me emotionally, and it makes it hard for me to do things. So in hindsight, I really truly thought that living alone was the best thing for me at the time. But like I said, financially, it was not a smart decision. I feel like unless you come from a financially secure background, which some people do. Some people have wealthy family members that, wealthy parents or grandparents that have paid for their college and paid for a lot of things like that. But if you don't have the luxury of that. I feel like you have to make sacrifices, and in hindsight, I did not make the necessary sacrifices that I had needed to make in order to live the lifestyle that I want to live. But again, I also think that, I don't know for sure, but I sort of lean towards everything happens for a reason and everything happens in the right timing and as it should. I consider myself a spiritual person, and I do believe that things that seem like failures are often here to teach you a lesson. So one thing I really did learn about myself this year from living alone is that I don't like to be alone. And I think I'm going to explain this in more detail right now, but I think I needed to be alone for a year in order to really learn that about myself. Because I don't know, I feel like a lot of my life I've told myself, and I've also been told this by a lot of other people, that I'm very strong. Okay. Everybody, my whole life, really, ever since I was 9 or 10, 11, 12, like ever since I was a teenager, even a pre-teenager, up until now, people have always, I feel like I've had a lot of struggles, and a lot of the times the response I've gotten from people around me is that, but God is giving you these struggles because you're so strong, or you've got this, you're a strong, I feel like I've always been like prototyped as this like strong, independent woman. Woman. I felt it sounded like I said plural woman. And I don't disagree necessarily, but kind of looking at my life and the way things happen in my life, I kind of think that I'm learning now as an adult woman that this strong, independent woman personality that I've developed, it was sort of a defense mechanism, and a personality that I sort of had to develop for survival, I guess you could say. I don't really feel like I had the strongest family background and the strongest support system growing up, and I feel like I had to fend for myself a lot. So after years of kind of growing into that person, I sort of started taking that on as my identity. I'm this strong, independent woman, But I feel like the past year, or even several years, there has been something in me that felt very unresolved. That felt very, I feel like this is kind of a dark conversation, but it's one that I do want to share because it has been a big part of my discovery this year. I've been in therapy for a long time, and I've been figuring out a lot, and I do feel like this year has been, I've figured a lot out this year in therapy and just from being alone and self-reflecting. What I'm getting to is that I don't think, I think this strong, independent woman that I've become really was not 100% who I actually am. I don't think, I think that I had developed that personality to survive certain childhood circumstances. And because of that, I sort of leaned on it as my identity. Like, oh, okay, this is who I am, and this is who I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be this strong, independent woman. And not only that, but the more I lean into that, the more people now cheer me on and like root me, like, oh, you're so strong, XYZ, you've got this. Like, and I feel like I feel like I kind of was just like, okay, this is who I am. This is what I'm supposed to be. I'm this strong, independent woman. I do everything by myself. I'm a loner. This is, I guess, my life path and what I was meant to be. But something in the back of my head had been slowly cracking, like had been slowly becoming very unhappy and slow, like kind of breaking down. And it really truly was through spending a lot of time alone this year that I realized I'm really not happy alone. And I'm really not happy doing everything alone. And I don't want to be alone anymore. In many different ways, you know? I'm coming to realize now that it wasn't okay. I heard this quote recently, and it really, when I read it, it made me, I feel like it touched me, like it really spoke to me in a way that almost made me cry when I read it. I was like, this makes so much sense to me. So what the quote said was, and forgive me, I'm going to screw up the quote because I'm paraphrasing it, but it said something along the lines of, I used to think I wanted to be alone, but now I'm realizing that I just wanted to feel safe around people. And that's exactly, I couldn't tell you, that's exactly what I've learned. Like they said it, I don't even know who said it, to be honest. It was like something I saw on the internet, but they said it way better than I could have said it. And I don't know, I realized that I didn't have the best, it just like the quote says, it's not so much that I want to be this loner, like making it on my own in the world. It's just that that's what I had to do for many years in order to survive, because I didn't have a good support system. You know, I didn't have a family. When I was very young, I didn't have a family life that was safe for me. I was in not the best situation family-wise. I didn't have a ton of good friends around me. I didn't have a ton of supportive friends. I didn't have a ton of healthy friends, because they say that you end up attracting friends and relationships that mimic your childhood circumstances, even if your childhood circumstances were bad. It's just because, or I shouldn't say bad, but unhealthy. You know what I mean? And I think the reason for that is because it feels like home, and it feels comfortable, and it feels safe for you. So, you know, again, I didn't have this great family support, and because of that, I think I chose relationships and friends as an adult that weren't good for me either, that were basically just mimicking my childhood circumstances. So really this past year, before I lived by myself, I really cleaned my slate. I stopped talking to family members that weren't healthy for me. I cut out friends that weren't healthy for me. I really just sort of started over. And I was aware of what relationships and what family members were not good for me, you know, and friends and stuff like that. But that's not to say that being alone is the best thing for me. The best thing for me is to now build relationships that are healthy and relationships that are good. And I do have a roommate now, and I'm really pleasantly surprised with how much happier I actually am with her around, you know? I was so afraid to have a roommate, but again, I was more afraid of the things that could go wrong, which very well could go wrong if you have the wrong roommate, by the way. But I have a good roommate and everything's been great. And it's really been pointing out how teamwork really, okay, my mind's kind of bouncing around, but I'm actually going to reference this podcast. So in the beginning of the year, I did have a podcast guest named Vincent Troiani, and he was the owner of VTX Studios. And one thing that he had mentioned on his podcast was that he really believed that building, and he's a business owner, keep in mind, like I said, but he really believed that building a team of people was the thing that was going to lead to his success as a business owner. And I think that was my first self-reflection of my loneliness, you know, because I thought to myself, holy shit, I don't have any team members at all. Like, I don't have I really am a one-woman show. I pay my own rent. I'm alone a lot of the times. I do this podcast by myself. I practice music by myself. I mean, the most socializing I do is with my students who are like 5 years old. So there's only so much you can talk about. And, with a 5-year-old, I can't really be completely myself or open about everything going on in my life, to little kids. So really, truly, I was so just doing everything by myself, and really listening to what my podcast guest said about how you really need a team to build something great. And again, that was my first sort of like self-reflection. Okay, I need, at some point, I need a team to back me up. I need to be part of something. And I really started noticing that with my roommate around, is that things have been better with her around, little things that I can't do by myself, she fills in the gaps. For example, I've always wanted plants around the house. Okay. I've something I've always wanted. This year I tried to get when I was living by myself, I should say, not this year, last year, I tried to get some house plants and I killed them pretty quickly because it's just not something I'm good at. I'm not good at taking care of plants. I'm great at taking care of animals, but I'm horrible at taking care of plants. I can't keep them alive. Well, she happens to love taking care of plants. It's one of her passions. So now we finally have plants all over the house and she's the one who does it. She's the one who takes care of it. So it's like, wow, that's a gap that I couldn't do on my own, or another thing, Listen, I may be a good musician, I may be a good linguist, I can read languages, I can understand different languages, I can understand music, but when it comes to practical things, I am the biggest fucking moron. I can barely screw in a light bulb. Like, that is me. I'm a total idiot with anything practical, like anything around the house type of thing. I don't know, my dad was very hands-on, so maybe I was spoiled that way growing up, where my father just took care of everything and I didn't have to really learn anything. But changing a tire, I can't even fill air in my tire. Like when my car is low on air, I literally go to the instant oil change place, like one of those Valvoline places, and I'm like, hey, I need air in my tire, and they just do it for free because I don't know how to do it myself. I'm such an idiot in this way, but she has totally filled in those gaps around the house. She's super hands-on with things. She took my TV down from the other room and did that for me, and I was supposed to call my dad to have him do it, but because the TV was I don't even know the right words to say. Nailed in the wall, I don't know, drilled in the wall. The TV was drilled in the wall of the room that she was going to rent out as her bedroom, and I didn't know how to take it down, and my dad wasn't around to help take it down. So she did it herself, and I was really impressed. She's really good with that type of thing. She can build things, and I don't know. The point I'm trying to make is that if you surround yourself with the right people, a team is better, because now things are getting done around the house quicker and more efficiently, and I'm happier. I feel just having a body in the house that isn't, just me or my cats, it just feels so much better. I feel so much less alone. I feel safer. You know what I mean? I feel like if somebody were to intrude in the house, like they did last year when I lived by myself, someone tried to break in the house, knowing that somebody else is there just makes me feel so much more secure, So teamwork, I do think teamwork really is a more efficient and better way to live, as long as, you get along with the people you're choosing to have in your life. That's one thing. Also, it's teaching me lessons about communication that I was I've always been a poor communicator. I've always been somebody who struggles to get my point across without coming across as angry. You know what I mean? Like I only have two modes. I sort of keep things inside, or I blow things up, and I don't know how to do anything in between. Well, having somebody around the house has taught me how to communicate more effectively and more consistently and more regularly, so that it doesn't get to a point where I just blow up. And that's something I've really struggled with my whole life, and it is one of the reasons why I wanted to live on my own before. But I'm realizing that that's just not realistic. At some point, you're going to have conflict with somebody, and I think it's a good thing to learn how to communicate those conflicts respectfully, you know? So that's been a really good thing for me. And then, I don't know, just to kind of top everything off, I've also been learning that I'm really not as introverted as I thought I was, you know? I always thought I was like someone who was happier by myself, or somebody who was introverted. And I'm really learning about myself that no, that's not the case at all. I think I still might technically be an introvert, because I think that the definition of extrovert versus introvert, I think it has something to do with where you get your energy from. So some people, for example, I think if you're an introvert, you get your energy back by retreating by yourself, and if you're an extrovert, you get your energy from other people. So actually, you know, I kind of have to reflect on that. I don't really know which one I am. I think I still am an introvert, but that's not to say that I don't need, or it could be like a combination of both. But I guess what I'm getting at is that in the past, I thought I was solely an introverted person who needed, you know, a lot of time to myself. But I'm sort of learning that that's not the case. At a certain point, you sort of go crazy just being by yourself all the time, you know? So I don't know. I really did learn a lot this year being by myself, the past year, about myself and my personality and who I really am and what is it that I really want from my life. And I'm definitely in a transitional period of my life right now where I broke everything down to zero, down to nothing. Like I said, I sort of shaved off certain friendships and relationships with family and friends that were not good for me. But now I'm at a place where I really want to start building those support systems back up again. I would say that there's still a lot of work to do there. But I already see some of the relationships I have been building that have been really good for me. For one, the band that I'm in. So I'm in a band now called Smoked Honey. And the relationships that I've built within that, you know, group right there have been really good for me, in many ways. You know, it's good to just, again, kind of reflecting back on what I was saying before. In the past, I had been in band situations that were not good for me, and my thought process was kind of like, fuck these people, I'm just gonna do everything on my own. I'm just gonna be a solo artist, and I'm just gonna do gigs by myself, and I'm just gonna play piano and support myself because I can't trust the people that I'm in a band with. And I was in a really weird band situation, I guess you could say, where the lead singer of the band was very creepy towards me, and I had to have a lot of conversations with him about it, because it was a weird situation, because it was like, for one, I was really happy to be getting, this was my first band I was in, and I was really happy to be getting live performances and getting that experience. But this one band member was really kind of screwing the whole thing up for me, because he, I'm trying not to give out too much information about this person, but let's just say that he was very lonely, and he was kind of taking advantage of me being in the band, and overstepping my boundaries of what I was comfortable with as far as how much time spending together. Let's just put it that way. And I was in a relationship and everything, and he didn't care. He just kind of was lonely and wanted a female companion around, and was kind of a little bit creepy, a little bit too overstepping personal boundaries and that type of stuff. So that was a really kind of sad and frustrating situation for me, because I had left that situation thinking like, what the fuck? Like, I can't rely on anyone. Like, this could be a really great situation and this person has to fucking screw it up. But the band I've been in now has been a life changer in that situation. I feel like for the most part we all get along very well. There have been some, like in the very beginning, I guess some conflicts, I guess you could say. But there were stuff that we were able to talk about and communicate. And like I said, it's been sort of a lesson for me on how to have good relationships, you know, because it doesn't matter what relationship you're in. And at some point there's going to be some sort of conflict. And it's totally, I think it's a healthy practice to learn how to resolve those conflicts. So the band I'm in now, Smoked Honey, if you want to follow us on Instagram, it's been great for me in that way, because we've been able to smooth out our conflicts with each other by just being respectful towards each other, and communicating those things as needed, and which has been really truly refreshing. Like, it's good to know that I have a community of people, you know, even though it's small. It's just I would say 4 of us, because I feel like, so it's me and then the drummer and the guitarist. And I would say the guitarist's girlfriend is sort of part of that clan, because she does come to things and helps out with things sometimes. But I would say with just, that's, like I said, just even this small circle has been really big for me as far as learning to open up and trust people, and realize that you can have conflicts with people and it doesn't have to break the friendship. It can only build the friendships, and it's just been really nice, you know, to have that in my life. So I would say that's probably an area in my life where I feel like I've developed really solid friendships. I would say in comedy a little bit too. The unfortunate thing about comedy, and this is another thing I want to get in as well, I haven't had a lot of time for it, as much time as I expected, you know, the past year. And that's actually something I want to get in right now. So last year I had mentioned that I had become very interested in stand-up, and I was really passionate about stand-up comedy in general. I started obsessing over you know, just listening to different comedy specials and binge watching different comedians. And it was kind of a new love, or a new passion, I guess you could say, because it wasn't something I had done my whole life. It was something that I had sort of had very recently gotten into. And I decided to pursue it myself. And the first time that I did an open mic was during 2020, actually. I think it was March 20. No, was it March? No. It was probably later than March. Because I think there was a couple months where everything was completely closed as far as open mics go. I think it must have been April or May, to be honest, where I did my first open mic at an outdoor, like, open mic thing. And then it kind of went from there. So I had mentioned in previous podcasts last year that I was almost angry at myself for becoming into comedy, because I was like, I already have a lot on my plate. I'm doing a podcast. You know, I'm a musician. Why the fuck would I add this in? It's so overwhelming. But it was something that I had to explore. It was something that I had to do for myself. My heart just wanted to do it. So I did it. Okay, so there are pros and cons about this situation. The con that I've been learning over the past year is that in order to really, really, truly do comedy and become really successful at it, you do have to do it a lot, you know? And one thing I've learned this past year is that because of my financial situation that I'm in right now, I don't have a lot of time. All right. As far as, I do feel like there are components about me that make me a good comedian. For one, I do have an interesting family. I have an interesting life story, I guess you could say, which I think is definitely important for being a good stand-up comedian. I think I have decent jokes. I think they need work, but I think there's something there for sure. The one thing that I'm severely lacking, which I've really for sure realized, especially over the past couple months, is that I'm really, really bad at improv. I'm really bad at being put on the spot. I don't know how to navigate those situations comfortably. And in order to be a good comedian, you do need that. You do need to be able to riff and kind of go with the flow and go with do crowd work and go do things more in the moment. I'm very scripted, I guess you could say, when it comes to stand up. Like, I stick to my jokes and I stick to my plan. And when there is something in the moment that deviates from the original plan, I'm totally lost and totally uncomfortable. That's not to say that I haven't surprised myself in some situations where I did a better job at crowd work than I thought I could. But for the most part, I'm not good at it, and I'm aware of that. I guess what I'm getting at here is that I remember last year I had said in a couple podcast episodes that I wasn't sure yet where comedy was going to take me. I wasn't sure where my career was going to take me at that point. And it was kind of scary, but also very exciting for me. I was like, I had put so much work into music at that point in my life, and now all of a sudden my heart is like taking me down this new direction. It's confusing. I don't know what to do, but it's something I have to do for myself, you know what I mean? Or else I'll live the rest of my life never knowing. So I have been learning this year that I still have a lot of work to do to be a great musician, and I have a lot of work to do to be a great comedian. And I don't, at this point in my life, I truly don't. Let's just put it this way. I'm not saying I have to give up one. I can sort of keep one as a hobby. But if I really, truly expect to be good at one of these things, I do have to pick one as my main career. You know what I mean? Like, I can't, because of my time issues and my financial issues, I can't expect to be amazing at both, because there isn't time to be amazing at both. So with that in mind, I am sort of reassessing things and looking at things differently now. If there was a gun pointed at my head and I had to pick what to do with my life, like, okay, you have to give one up. You can only do music or you can only do comedy. I would definitely pick music because, for one, I've already put so much work into it. And two, I just know in my heart that I have it in me. You know what I mean? Like, if I really think about comedy and music, and what my skills are, I do know certain things about myself as a comedian. Like I said, I know I have an interesting story. I know I can be funny, and I know I do know those things. I can be very funny, actually. I definitely have a good personality. But like I said, I just don't know if I really have what it takes to do improv, to riff in the moment. And I feel like in order to develop that skill, I would have to put a lot of time into it. As far as music goes, there's still work that needs to be done. And funny enough, improv is that. I'm not a great solo pianist, for sure. Like, I need to work on that. But I do know in my heart that I could. Like, I know in my heart that I have it in me. And I think that's the main difference. It's like, I could just feel in my bones that I am a musician, but I can't feel in my bones that I am comedian who could do crowd work well. I don't feel it. Like I feel what I feel is that if I devoted a lot of time to it, I could be okay at crowd work, good enough. But with music, I feel like if I devoted a lot of time to it, I could be great at solo work or whatever, improv, whatever you want to say. So with that being said, I'm sort of definitely this year going to kind of change the direction of how I do things. That's not to say that I'm giving up comedy, because I don't think I have to. Because quite honestly, there's been a lot of things I've learned in comedy, the relationships I've built, the podcast guests I've gained from it, and quite honestly, it's therapeutic. It's extremely therapeutic to be able to go on stage to a bunch of strangers and talk about dicks or whatever. But as far as what do I see myself doing career-wise, I'm definitely kind of changing the direction now a little bit. And I was telling this to one of my friends, but it's kind of like I kind of see myself going forward as like the inversion of Bill Burr. Let me explain what that means, because that makes no sense to probably right now until I explain it. So the inversion of Bill Burr. Okay, so Bill Burr is a phenomenal comedian who happens to be a drummer and sometimes does drum gigs, but he is a comedian. Like he's a professional comedian and an amateur drummer. He didn't quit drumming, but he knows his place. You know, I kind of see myself as the inversion of that going forward. I kind of see myself as being a great musician who is an amateur comedian. And like I said, I don't want to give up comedy. I still want to commit to a once a week schedule. I still want to continue to build those relationships. I still want to continue to have the experience, but also keeping in mind that there's only so good I can get at it without the time, without being able to commit the time to it. I feel like the only way for me to be able to commit the time to being a pro musician and a pro comedian would be if I didn't have to work a job. If that were the case, I probably could devote my time to both and have those things be my job. But unfortunately, that is not the case right now. I do have to spend a lot of time working to pay off some debts, you know, and because of that, it is right now the smarter thing for me to focus on developing my skills as a musician, and comedy being something that I just do for myself because I love to do it. It's something just for me, pretty much. It's kind of sad to say this, but it's also very relieving. It's also very relieving to know that I could be this honest with myself about it, because I'm definitely a stubborn person who doesn't like to quit or doesn't like to give up on things. One thing I will say this. I will say I was really shocked. Well, first of all, I don't regret doing it at all. Like, I'm really happy that I went for it, because quite honestly, I feel like that's not something a lot of people can say they tried. Like, I feel like a lot of people might be like, oh, maybe I should try comedy, and then they can never get past that initial hump of doing an open mic, you know? So I feel like I conquered that. I went up and I did it, and that's a testament to my human spirit and the strength of my human spirit, you know what I mean? But I'm also sort of relieved with myself that I didn't even finish my previous thought. I'm sorry. I was going to say that I'm also really surprised how quickly things started happening when I did do it. And I'm going to be honest, I think that has to do with, I might not be giving myself enough credit, because I do think I actually did write some really funny jokes. But like I said, there were just certain situations where I was like, oh my God, I can't say my jokes right now. I have to riff in this moment with the crowd and go off schedule, and I don't feel comfortable doing that. And here's the thing about that. What's really, really weird about that is that I could be good at riffing around friends, like around parties and friends. But for some reason, it's a totally different thing when you're on stage. I choke up. I get nervous. My delivery is terrible. I don't know what to say. It's really bad. So, but what I was going to say is that I'm really surprised with how quickly things started happening when I did put myself out there. So if there is one thing I did learn from, dabbling into stand-up, is that things are a lot more possible than you think. If there's something that you want to do, you really should just try it and see where it goes. Because looking back, I ended up doing some gigs with some successful comedians, you know what I mean? And I never in a million years thought that would, I thought I was just going to be doing open mics for a year. And lo and behold, I think what happened was that I don't think there are a ton of women in comedy right now. I mean, there definitely are getting more and more, but I would say for the most part, it still is a very much a excuse me, I'm still recovering COVID, obviously. I would say it's very much a male-dominated field for sure. So what happens is when there is a woman in comedy who's somewhat decent, and I think that's what I was. I was decent. I don't think I'm anywhere near skilled. For example, my friends and family would ask to come see me, and I would be like, no, absolutely not. I just didn't. As far as music went, I didn't feel comfortable being seen by my friends and family on stage as a musician till 5 or 6 years in. You know what I mean? So same thing with comedy. I know I don't have the skills, but I do know I had the potential to develop those skills, But I was really surprised how quickly things started happening, how quickly I started getting gigs. And like I said, I think a lot of that was because I was a female and they just needed females, and I was decent. I was decent enough to do it. With that being said, if you are listening to this and you are a funny woman who has been thinking of doing stand-up, you should do it because you will get work. I mean, like I said, I had only been doing it for 1 year and I already started to get work. So if you're a funny woman and how come every time I say women, it doesn't sound like singular, it just sounds like plural? That's just, I don't know. But anyways, if you are a woman who is funny and who's thinking about doing stand-up, you should definitely do it because you will get work fast, unless you really suck. I think if you really, really suck, you won't get work. But I don't know. It was pretty amazing to kind of watch that whole thing flourish just from putting myself out there and saying yes to a crazy idea, So I did learn that. And like I said, I'm not going to be quitting stand-up. I'm just understanding what it is in my life right now. I'm not pursuing it right now as a career. I'm just doing it for myself. I'll still do shows if I get offered the opportunities to do shows. But I know realistically that right now I only have the time to devote writing jokes 2 days a week, sitting home and writing things out 2 days a week, and doing open mics 1 day a week. And that's all I have the time for. And the truth is that if you want to be really, really good at comedy, you need to be doing that shit every single day. And I can't. I don't want to. I don't want to because that would actually require me to give up music, and I don't want to do that. So I am aware of where things are, and I'm being very honest with myself and with you guys about it. I'm still a comedian. I'm not giving it up, but I know what place it has in my life right now. And who the hell knows? They say sometimes that when you let go of resistance to things just start happening against your will. So who knows? I might be saying this and then all of a sudden be getting really good at it because I don't care as much, So maybe that will happen. But as of now, that's where things are with it. And that's that, Okay, so what did I say? I think I covered everything I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about, just to kind of recap everything I said, I wanted to talk about my fear of living with other people and how that ended up resolving I want to talk about comedy and music. Yeah, and I guess to kind of add to what I just said there, that does mean I do want to devote a lot of time and energy towards music and towards my podcast. By the way, I do think podcasting is something that I don't want to get rid of, for sure. I think that this is the world we live in. We live in a very technology-based era, and I think that no matter what you are, comedian, musician, artist, whatever the fuck you do, I do think you need to have a social media presence in order to get noticed, you know? So I do want to continue working on this podcast. Again, once I'm 100% recovered here, I am going to be having in-person guests again. And I think next week I have to do one more. I think I do have to do one more one more solo podcast, but I think after that people will start coming in person. But I think next week I'm going to be okay to do a video podcast. I'll be feeling better earlier and we'll be able to do that. But yeah, that's where things are right now. I also did want to mention one last thing, because of kind of my change of direction mentally, career wise, as far as me kind of putting all of my efforts, 85 to 90% of my efforts towards music, and maybe only 10 to 15% of my efforts towards, well, I don't know if that's so correct. I think probably 80% of my energy will be towards music and 20% will be towards comedy at this point. I would say that's a fair thing to say. I would say like 80% of my energy directed towards music. With that being said, it does take the pressure off of where I want to live now, because before, the whole thing between Austin and New York was specifically because of comedy, because I was looking for, you know, where are the comedy hubs, like where are the places where comedy is the most thriving. So now that there's been a percentage change of my, you know, values right now of what I consider, what I want to put my energy towards, that does take the pressure off that a bit. And I do, you know, if I am going to be devoting a weekly routine to comedy, you know, like I said, once a week open mics, 2 days a week writing jokes, I do still need to be around comedy, but it doesn't necessarily need to be like the comedy hub of the world. It doesn't have to be New York City. So that that definitely takes a lot of stress and a lot of pressure off of my decision. A lot of people have been pushing me towards Philly, and now that I am going to be putting more time and energy into music and my band, that's actually a much smarter idea right now. So it is, isn't it funny that this whole past year, it was like Austin and New York and everything kind of fell through, and now it's like, oh, well, Philly's very possible. It's just kind of funny how, and that, by the way, I didn't even mention this before. That's another thing I learned, is that, first of all, I hate cliche quotes. I hate them. But I'm going to use one. You know, what was it, John Lennon, who said that life happens while you're busy making plans. One thing I learned this year for sure is that life will sort of unfold as it should, you know? Like, I had so many specific things in my mind. Like, I want to do this, I want to do that. And so many things sort of threw a wrench in my plan. But in hindsight, when I really look at it and I really think about it, a lot of those things really were for the better, and I couldn't see it at the time, but I do see it now. How certain things that happened to me that at the time seemed like a total catastrophe ended up being really good for me. Oh yeah, by the way, there is one thing I want to mention too. I still do want to travel a lot, like no matter where I put myself. Like, for example, if Philly is my home base, that doesn't mean I don't want to travel, you know? That doesn't mean I don't want to visit New York City for the day or take a plane to Austin for a few days, obviously, when I don't have COVID. But, because, by the way, I was actually planning a trip to Austin with my girlfriend from comedy scene. Her name is Caitlin. I don't know if I should say that because I don't know if she wants to disclose that, but whatever. I didn't say her last name. But we were supposed to go to Austin together to do to like try out the comedy scene over there, and that got canceled because of COVID. So that was kind of a bummer. But that's okay. We actually got a refund for our tickets, and we're gonna just try it again when things are warmer and looking better outside. But yeah, what I'm really getting at here is that no matter where I live, like I said, it's very heavily looking like I'm going to be moving to Philly when my lease is done here in about 9 or 10 months. But even when I live there, I would love to travel the country, and it would be good with that being said, it would be smarter to live in Philly because it's so much cheaper there, and then it would afford me the freedom to travel wherever I want to go. Like, you know what I mean? If I were to live in New York, it would be like, okay, I have this really expensive apartment. Now I can't afford to do anything but just be here, So I don't know. It's just crazy. The past year has taught me so much. It's been not what I expected, but there has been successes in other ways. Like, I learned so much about myself. And I really do think that things are starting to kind of fall into place for me in the right ways. And I feel like I sort of trust the universe right now, that things are sort of happening for me, and things are sort of falling into place as they should. And I have a lot of faith. I don't want to jinx it because I also had a lot of faith in 2020 and look what the fuck happened. So I don't want to jinx it, but I don't want to jinx it, but I do have a lot of faith that this is going to be a very good year for me. I really think that things are going to be, I'm sort of letting go of control over everything and kind of just being like, I tried to do things myself last year and everything just fell apart. So I'm kind of letting go of that resistance and sort of letting things unfold as they should. And I have a lot of faith and trust in that process right now. And I'm feeling really good and really hopeful about a lot of things, But anyways, I'm going to conclude the podcast here. Sorry about that, guys. Like I said, I'm still recovering COVID. Hopefully, I think next week you're going to have one more solo podcast, but I will go back to videos because I know you guys like that better. So this will be the last audio only one for a while, hopefully. And then in 2 weeks, I'll be starting to get guests again because I won't be contagious at that point. Again, this is the Pranzata Podcast, episode number 44. If you liked what you heard today, don't forget to hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit like. Don't forget to comment. And I will be back next week with episode 45. Have a good day, guys. Bye.